Ladies and gentlemen, our next presentation is dedicated to evolution of targeted attacks on the financial sector, and it will be presented by Dmitry Volkov, co-founder of the Group IB company. Good afternoon. You can hear me, I hope. What do I need to do for the presentation to come up? Good. Thank you. My name is Dmitry Volkov. I'm responsible for several departments in the IB company. The title was about targeted attacks on the financial sectors. I decided to focus on one group of attacks. It's called Lazarus groups. It's a North Korean public hackers. It's a special service that works for the North Korean government. And they create attacks on banks and have different motivation. We'll talk about the motivation as well. I thought it would be more interesting to learn about something new rather than talk about old things. I'm presenting here results of a research that is still ongoing, so we might review some results, but intelligence is good when delivered on time, so you'd better know it beforehand rather than read about it in the news half a year later. So this is a short introduction. This is how the map of the attackers looks like. Well, it's not that frightening today. We only have 5 groups left. 3 groups are your regular hackers who attack banks and steal money, and there are 2 governmental. One is called Black Energy, the other is called Lazarus, and Lazarus is the one we're going to talk about today. There's a lot of information on the news that there's been a new attack and new names are mentioned, but there are the same people behind these new names. So we're trying to investigate. And there are not so many groups, organized groups, that could be seen as a threat for those being attacked. As for Lazarus, it's their focus initially, since it's North Korea, they've always been targeted at South Korea, and they started by running attacks to sabotage when they needed to eliminate some data, to disrupt certain networks. It had to do with facilities that were situated in South Korea. Sorry. So they were. So the first were called Lazarus. So when they're talking about Lazarus, they're talking about 3 subdivisions. Only one is called Lazarus, and they're aimed at sabotage. At the same time, they had a smaller subdivision that was after spying, and it's called Andariel. And Blue Norov are guys who are motivated to extract money. They get access to a financial organization and would extract a couple of $1 million, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars. What makes it difficult? It's difficult to divide them into groups. It's hard to understand what you're dealing with. You might find some malware. You need to attribute it to the source. You need to answer the question, why is the attacker there? Maybe they're interested in some documents, and you'd be able to solve this incident. Or if it's sabotage, you can do basically nothing with it. And finance is the same. I mean, if the money is stolen, you learn about it sooner or later. They all have some specific instruments, but they have well-known Trojans. Their malware range is pretty big. They've used Trojans they wrote themselves. Sometimes they took legal ones. But if you have seen something from this list, you can attribute them to this tool to the attacking group, because random users won't use these instruments. Some undocumented new Trojans mentioned here, as you can see them on the slide, and they have different motivation. They DDoS bots, they encrypt data, or WannaCry, you might be familiar with, and the financial tools are in the middle column. Why they potentially can be interested to this audience? We used to think that North Korea does not attack organizations that have to do with the friendly nations, like China, and some say Russia is also a friendly country in terms of North Korea. So they shouldn't be attacking organizations from these countries. In 2017, there was a mass attack on European banks, and they've trianed several banks, and it was a long-term consequence. So the idea was that they should infect the devices. I'll tell you what they did. They hacked kind of websites of the regulators, not of the central bank. They are like central banks. In Ecuador and in Poland, a lot of Polish banks were infected, and there was a file if the client has come from certain IP address, he should be infected. And there was one IP address in this file that was affiliated with central bank, and you can see it. So there were no confirmation that the attack was successful, but the address was there, so we shouldn't ignore it. In 2018, and Checkpoint guys found it actually. They found a document which was later linked to this North Korean group, and this is how this document looked like. It was almost unreadable, but you can see it's written in Cyrillic. And all of a sudden, those malware documents started to be downloaded from Russia. So it meant that some Russian organizations were under attack. Which ones, we still don't know. This is the history of development. The timeline, it starts in 2015 with first attacks. The red ones are confirmed attack, non-confirmed attacks, and green goes for the attacks that were confirmed. The biggest one was in Bangladesh when they tried to extract $1 million. There was a number of successful thefts. And in some cases, the thefts were counted, and the money was eventually found when they were started to be laundered, and the money was returned to the bank. The second major attack happened in Poland, and it all had to do with SWIFT.
As you know, it's the international system for transferring money, and the amounts there were pretty large. The main problem, those trying to execute those attacks, was with cashing in the money. Starting from the mid-2018, you started noticing that they were trying to steal money not just via SWIFT, but also using ATMs, so outside of SWIFT. We'll touch upon that too. In mid-2018, there was an important event there. They changed the vector of intervention. They also used spear phishing. Everyone uses that. And they also added the more sophisticated elements of social engineering. Then they switched to ATMs. Let's start with the heist methods. Everyone is afraid of Lazarus. All banks outside Russia are afraid of Lazarus because ostensibly they have this sophisticated tool for stealing money. They have produced a Trojan for the bank server, and it starts intercepting certain types of transactions. The BO system in the Central Bank of Bangladesh, they described it pretty well. You are keeping track of transactions, you log certain transactions, and if it's a fraudulent one, information about transactions can be blocked or information can be deleted from the database. It's all done automatically. This Trojan in its full battle mode was used once. There was one incident in the Central Bank of Bangladesh that was identified, and it also was used once in an unnamed bank in Vietnam. Both in Bangladesh and Vietnam, those Trojans had been hiding in the corporate system of the bank for at least 1 year. So it took a long time. It took 1 year to prepare a successful fraudulent operation. So how is money actually stolen? The tool was used only twice, but it was still successful. If you take a look at the technical analysis, it's more like an instrument, a tool for collecting intelligence. The targets were central banks in various countries, usually in developing countries, where the level of security is not that high, and also large international banks. Obviously, information about international transactions and international transfers, SWIFT transfers, is of interest. The bank that was attacked with the Trojan, they had a very detailed log for different transactions. In all other cases, that tool was not used, even when they were stealing money via SWIFT. The Trojan is the place of an operator that has legitimate access to the system of bank transfers. It received the login and password and logs in the system and performs transactions, but to fraudulent, illegal accounts. They tried to find the exact amount that was stolen, the patterns, but they couldn't do it. Transfers are usually standard, but the methods can be different. They use serial number or some other numbers. I'm not sure that's very interesting for this audience. The amounts were pretty high, usually more than $300,000. Sometimes it could be up to $10 million. Back to SWIFT. 2016, first SWIFT attack with the Central Bank of Bangladesh. Nobody knew they would be attacking ATMs. As I said, their priority was used to be in South Korea, and our South Korean colleagues did a research. In 2015, they hacked an ATM in the banking system. There was this provider that was providing services for a particular banking system, and they downloaded malware for about 60 ATMs. In a year, they collected information about different bank cards, but it wasn't clear how the money was stolen because they looked at the collected information about the date, time, the issuer, and the bank card number. How did they hack it? They discovered the antivirus server. They gained access to it, the local server. Then they gained access to the ATMs, and any antivirus software allows you to use kits and packages, and so they rolled out their Trojan. It was a RATM tool, the main Trojan that is used for spying, and then they downloaded this illegal library there. We received the Trojan, we received the library, but it's hard to finish the research. It allows you to collect various information. You see it on the screen. Responses from systems, from processing systems, and everything related to cards, the balance, the types of requests and queries. So anything you do at an ATM can be collected into this library. And they learned to do it. They did it in 2015. They installed the Trojan. And this attack was identified only in 2017. It took them 2 years to collect bank card data. About 200,000 bank cards were collected into the illegal library. My version of the events is that I think in those years they had to do preparatory work. And I'll talk about it a bit later. The new wave started in 2018 in India, in Cosmos Bank. Money was stolen. 13.5 million was stolen. What was special about it? Fraudsters can steal money from ATMs. They install Trojans there, and they can withdraw as much cash as they want. But this scheme was much more elaborate. So there's a server that services all requests in your banking system. That's called ATM Switch. They got access to that server. There was a specific operating system. Then they downloaded their exploit, their malware code. What this code does. The code intercepted all requests in the banking systems. So it receives a request, then it checks, is this request connected with a particular card number? If this request came from a particular bank card number, then the code must have the same response, the approve response. So imagine you're sending a request, can I withdraw $100? And the code says approve. The centers that validate this data did not even receive them. So they started using this algorithm to withdraw cash from various bank card numbers. The malware code intercepted the requests and approved all those illegal requests, and this way they stole a lot of money. The first incident that became public occurred in India in 2018 with Cosmos Bank. A bit later, the same happened in Chile. Then US CERT issued a notification that these incidents are taking place. We got this information, and when we started talking about it with our foreign partners, one of them confirmed that they also encountered a similar incident in 2016. In all these cases, criminals were hiding in the banking system from 6 months up to 1 year. There had been no attribution before South Korea, but after we gathered enough information, we managed to connect these incidents with Lazarus. There was an incident in Vietnam where money was not stolen. CERT issued a notification where they shared the compromising indicator. They said that the bank was hacked using the pay-share payload. Trojan was installed. A simple one. They performed incident response, and they discovered the Trojan. It was identical. Even the hashes were the same. Another interesting point. After the incident occurred at a large bank, SWIFT came into play. And the same month, after the money was stolen, they said that this looks like Lazarus, but some strange backdoor was being used. They called it tracked by reverse. And they identified a single IP. There's the IP, ending with 23. We have a system that monitors different statuses of internet. And we can see where different attack frameworks appear. At the server, starting from December 2018 to February 2018, had Metasploit. At that exact point, from May to September, that server had Cobalt Strike. The administrator was the same, due to the indicator that SWIFT received and disclosed after the incident response at Cosmos Bank. We learned that North Korea was using Metasploit, Cobalt Strike, and other available frameworks. They're used by everyone, even cybercriminals. So when you see something like this, it's hard to perform an attribution. And here you have to start inventing new names for criminal groups. Another interesting thing, we found another server in the same subnetwork, just with a different last figure, and we detected the same set. We saw Metasploit and Cobalt Strike. What else? The servers were not changed. They were not redeployed. The owner remained the same for about 1 year. That's a pretty long time. Another factor that confirms that after they infiltrated the network, they can monitor the activities of the operator for a very long time. What's more interesting, after analyzing the files that were discovered at Cosmos Bank, these files in the screen that you see in the screen were found. That means the names of the files are often similar. We saw the same with the case with North Korea and the Trojan. We discovered a Trojan that was used in 2017 and 2016. How was it special? When they attacked the banks in Poland and in other countries, they decided to use a sort of a false flag. They produced a Trojan that gains access to isolated systems. So you've isolated your system, there is no access to the internet, but the criminals still infiltrated it, even though they might be in another country. That means that in your company there is a segment where internet can be accessed, and by sharing the traffic you can infiltrate the isolated system. So they have this special Trojan, and they have commands there in Russian. The commands are to receive, hold, etc. So the first thing they said, maybe this can be attributed to Russia. But it turned out that at the end of the day it was North Korea. A good flag, a good indicator that proved it was attributed to North Korea. The same was with Chile and Cosmos Bank. In October 2018, there was a forum held where stolen banks, stolen cards were sold. How often are cards sold from various regions? This is the diagram of downloading various card shops in Pakistan. Nobody was interested until October 2018. The dam was pretty small. In about a month, the number of dumps, the copy of the magnet strip, increased. It wasn't quite clear who was the one who collected so many cards and why they were selling them in such big lots. Another peak occurred in January. Once again, Pakistani cards, but there was a difference because previously it was just data from the magnet strip. In June, it was data not just from the magnet strip, but also PIN codes. It wasn't clear who was behind it. We started digging into it, and we found another interesting thing. In January, when data from Pakistani cards was being collected, someone downloaded application PDF. This application PDF file, the hashes were a bit different, but it was the same file that we found in the bank in Chile. The Chilean bank, the attack was conducted by criminals in North Korea. What's interesting, that was an application that connected to Embrook Store resources and then connected to Lazarus. Look at the timing. These files were compiled in Pakistan on October 31, 2018. So the timing is right for the second wave, where the cards from Pakistan were stolen. but it doesn't quite explain the first wave, because you see the 5 days deviation. So the data is available, but we are still investigating.
Well, they fit the second incident, however. Application PD is quite interesting. We'll talk about watering hole and phishing. We'll skip the phishing as well. We have little time left. A social network, what do they do in terms of banks? It was in Pakistan, and it was also guaranteed in Cosmos Bank, almost guaranteed in Cosmos Bank. They connect with the personnel, with an employee, through LinkedIn, for example, and they offer work. In Red Bank case, a developer post, and after a certain communication in Skype, they start sending him files to fill out the form. How does the form look like? This is how it looks like. You fill in your name, your age, your role in the bank, your skills. And once you press the finish button, or you launch this application, you already have a backdoor from the Lazarus group. So it's a very precise intrusion. Normally, when we have to do with malware or delivery of malware through a browser or via email, you have various solutions, and many of those that would check whether, antivirus and sandboxes that would launch the files. Here they bypass those. You get into the computer you need, and you don't need to spend that much effort afterwards. The latest campaign was on May the 28th. It is a slightly modified interface of the program. You press finish, and you generate an application or a PDF file that lists the data that you've filled out, and it's a kind of a PDF file that you have to send back. Infection, how does it happen? I have 3 minutes. Okay, I'll just eat up the time. I'll skip the infection. It's quite a complex. Trojans. They used to use the Trojan package consisted of a spy Trojan that would collect the data about the system and give the basis for the decision. Well, maybe your PC is interesting. Maybe you're a researcher. If everything was okay, they would launch the program that is responsible for downloading other models. In this case, it's the basic rat, client rat. They have different names for those. And they also had a program that would do proxies. In 2017, this Trojan that is this spying Trojan, intelligence Trojan, they rewrote it onto shell. Then they had a version for macOS. With all the researchers, they see the phishing email, and once you see there's a Trojan in it, you see it's a phishing and malware payloads. Nobody gets them. Why this infection process is so complex and complicated, and only in December 2018 we managed to get the major Trojan. It was written in PowerShell, and we could see that the spying Trojan was rewritten for a fresher version. Here I compare various Trojans. I have 1 minute. Okay. What else I wanted to say? This is this major Trojan, which used to be a binary file, and they're still using it. We still see that some of the organizations are infected. It was 28 teams. What we received from Thailand in December 2018, the same Trojan, but written in PowerShell, and many teams, they duplicate each other. But we received a version that was still under development, and out of 28 teams, I think there were 28 teams, as far as I remember. No, 24. 13 teams was still developed. They basically had to do with spying functions. They're responsible to create a screen, make screenshots, manipulating your web camera, and an important story about capturing you pressing a button. That data is relevant for December 2018. Now it has been developed. When we did our first research and did our first review after those massive attacks on Poland and other countries, we learned, or we found a way to follow up their infrastructure. There was a bug, there was a mistake that we used actually. So we found all the previous attacks. This year, this is a new PowerShell backdoor. This basic backdoor that nobody sees. We've only seen one sample so far. We learned how to identify and follow it. We've had over the past 6 months, we found 63 unique IP addresses that had it activated. It means that all these servers were used in real attacks, and the system to manage this backdoor has been activated. But whether it is used for attacks or not, maybe some of them are reserved ones. We'll still need to figure this out. As for the conclusions, Lazarus. It attacks banks not only to steal money through SWIFT, but it does it in a very complex and intricate way. Secondly, you need to protect not only your web traffic or your post traffic. You need to understand how you're gonna secure your clients that have legitimate access to various networks, including LinkedIn. It uses instruments, PowerShell Empire, Metasploit. They work fast. We also know that all the toolkits, not only single Trojans, are rewritten on PowerShell, and they're almost done with it. And it'll probably give them new opportunities. And this Trojan, which is called BanSwift, the one they used in 2016, seemingly to attack SWIFT or to attack SWIFT will probably file a case against me. Through SWIFT, they wanted to steal money in an actual bank. After 2016, nobody has seen this Trojan used. But since it's a real spying tool to spy after financial operations from the central banks, a reincarnation is going to appear in PowerShell. We need to follow it. And the older Lazarus gets, in some organizations, after they steal money, they delete this shadow. They launch crypting programs, and they would delete various environments, and they have developed those programs. You can get them on a GitHub. What does it lead to? Since they've compromised the network, they would launch a program that would stop all the servers from working. If it's a large bank, the bank will lose $20 million in one day. Well, this is not a disaster for a bank. They will live through it. Once a bank when its work is disrupted for several days, that is a much more serious challenge. This is where they start to lose more. And with Lazarus, the risk is high, especially after they started to be more active, starting from the second half of 2018. Well, I'm done. If you have questions, I probably have 2 minutes to answer them. Well, you're talking about North Korea. On the other hand, I mean, it's a small country. People are living in poverty. Where do they have these skills from? They're not, in the kind of conferences. They don't communicate on forums. Well, it's not that difficult to break into a bank or to break a bank. Even, your regular cyber criminals do it successfully. Today there was another attack. In a month or month and a half, we'll see a piece of news that somebody, was robbed. It's not that difficult to break into the bank. What is really complex is how you cash it and launder it, the money afterwards. Compromising a major bank, even a central bank, is not difficult task. You don't need any super skills. No 0 days. They use it to spy, but they don't use it not to attack. They don't have any extra complex Trojans. So you don't need some special education. I mean, special training to do that. You can just use regular tools, and this is what they do. My name is Igor, Rostelecom company. I somehow missed telling us how did you actually discover it was North Koreans. When we did our research, I need an hour and a half to tell you about the whole thing. We learned how to do a follow-up on their infrastructure, how it emerges. They were basing the tools on the legitimate compromised structures. They would break into, I don't know, a public university or business organization where security is not an issue. They would launch their Trojan, and they would Trojan an organization. So they would these infected computers, PCs, would start to interact, and then this traffic was redirected to a legal organization server or another host, and the fourth server, the one that received commands from the operator, would deliver them back to the infected computers. So through the research we've done, we've managed to discover this network, and we managed to find where the operators' commands came from, and they came from North Korea. So it's pretty simple. Have you seen, many operators from North Korea? There's only one. It's not that difficult to track. And we're also talking about a number of factors. We did a unique thing. We tracked the commands, the operator's command, and we tracked it back to North Korea. It took us time. These tools are reused. They adapt them, but in fact, they reuse a lot of codes. So analyzing malware code attributed to certain by certain experts, they only confirm that this malware is produced by North Korea. And after we've started to develop it, we got confirmation from law enforcement bodies who are responsible for investigations. And so a number of factors tell us they've just proved that we did it correctly. But the process is not simple, I assure you.
I am from Bangladesh. I work in the Central Bank of Bangladesh. So in your presentation, I have seen that you have mentioned the BB Swift attack. We suspect the attack came from outside the country. But in the same time, maybe after the incident of Bangladesh, we came to know from the media that a Russian bank has been hacked. I am not sure whether it is true or not, but is the attack came from outside the country, I mean outside the Russia or inside the Russia?
Let me rephrase your question. So you ask, and just tell me if I'm wrong or not. You're asking if there are any forums outside of Russia? Or
I mean the attack came from outside the Russia or from inside the Russia? Attack was initiated from someone inside the Russia or outside the Russia?
we're speaking about specific attack or in general?
Actually, I am.
So about attack on Central Bank of Russia?
Yeah, I found it in the yes.
As for Central Bank of Russia, we don't have any confirmation that it was successfully hacked. In my presentation, I said that the IP address that belongs to Central Bank of Russia was listed in configuration file on the server that exploited vulnerability during watering hole attack. It was just listed there. But what is also good to know, that the list was not super huge. It was about 128 IP addresses listed there. And some of organizations, some of banks that were hacked in 2017 and 2018 were actually listed in the same configuration file. So I just say that, in case of Central Bank of Russia, that North Korean potentially could be interested in getting access to Central Bank of Russia. But I didn't say that we were successfully attacked.
Okay, thank you.
Хорошо, организаторы показывают.
Okay, the organizers are telling me that I'm through. Well, you'll be able to find me. I'll try to answer your. Denis Petrankov, Power to Networks. What countries are attacking Russia? If we're talking about targeted attacks on banks, and my presentation was about Russia is attacking itself. Notably, out of these 5 groups that I've listed, apart from North Korea, they all speak Russian. It doesn't mean there's one person. Some of them are Russian citizens, some of them are not. They may be outside Russia. So it is our citizens that attack us. Well, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.